You are a student of disruptive innovation. Everything you do, the genomic revolution, industrial innovation, next generation internet, we're all about that. Why don't you disrupt the financial services industry? Because it's broken.
Right now, while most people are distracted by noise, trends, and short-term headlines, one investor is quietly making a bold claim. Not about what might happen, but about what is already happening. Cathie Wood believes that the next massive wave of wealth creation is not in the future.
Benchmarks are where they are, so the stock market indexes are where they are, because of what has happened historically.
It is already here, unfolding in real time, hiding in plain sight while the majority either doubts it or completely ignores it. And here is what makes this moment so powerful. It does not feel obvious. It does not feel safe, and it definitely does not feel comfortable, because the biggest opportunities in history never do. They look uncertain at first, they feel risky, they get criticized, people call them bubbles, people say it is too early, or too late, or too dangerous.
You have to look back that far, to the late 1800s, early 1900s, to see multiple innovation platforms evolving at the same time.
And during that noise, only a small group of people actually pay attention. That is exactly what is happening right now. And if you miss it, it will not be because you did not hear about it. It will be because you did not believe it. Because what Cathie Wood is pointing toward is not just one trend. It is a convergence.
Robotics, autonomous vehicles or robots. Energy storage, they will be electric. Artificial intelligence, they will be powered by artificial intelligence. Transportation.
A collision of technologies that are accelerating faster than anything we have seen before. And when technologies converge, they do not just grow, they explode. Artificial intelligence, robotics, energy storage, genomics, blockchain. Individually, they are powerful. Together, they are unstoppable. And here is where things start to get interesting. After some time, you have to ask yourself something most people avoid. What if the biggest risk right now is not investing in these technologies, but ignoring them? Because historically, the greatest wealth has been created during periods of technological disruption. The internet, smartphones, cloud computing. At the beginning, they looked uncertain. Many people stayed away, and those who waited for clarity paid the highest price. They bought late. They entered after the majority of gains were already made. And that is exactly the pattern Cathie Wood believes is repeating. Except this time, the scale is bigger, much bigger. She talks about exponential growth, and most people do not understand what that actually means. Because human brains are wired to think linearly. We expect progress to be steady, predictable. But exponential growth does not work like that. It starts slow, almost invisible, and then suddenly it accelerates beyond anything you expected. And by the time it becomes obvious, the opportunity is already gone. Look at artificial intelligence. Just a few years ago, it felt like a concept, something experimental, something far away. Now it is everywhere. Writing, coding, designing, automating. And this is just the beginning. Because according to Cathie Wood, artificial intelligence is not just another technology. It is a foundational shift. It changes how every industry operates. Healthcare, finance, education, manufacturing, everything. And when something touches everything, the impact is not small. It is massive. But here is the part that most people underestimate. The real opportunity is not always in the obvious places. It is not just the biggest companies. It is not just the names everyone talks about. Sometimes, the biggest gains come from the ecosystems built around the technology, the enablers, the platforms, the infrastructure, and those are often overlooked because they are not as exciting. They do not get as much attention, but they grow quietly. And that is where smart money starts to position early. Now let us go deeper. Cathie Wood also emphasizes something that sounds simple, but is incredibly powerful. Innovation reduces costs, and when costs go down, adoption goes up. That is how disruption spreads. Think about it. If artificial intelligence becomes cheaper, more businesses will use it. If energy storage becomes cheaper, more countries will adopt it. If blockchain becomes more efficient, more systems will integrate it. And every time adoption increases, value increases, not slowly, exponentially. But here is the psychological trap. Most people wait for proof. They want certainty. They want to see success before they believe in it. And by the time they get that proved, the opportunity has already moved. Because markets do not reward certainty. They reward foresight. They reward those who are willing to act before everything is obvious. And that is uncomfortable. Because it means accepting uncertainty. It means being early. And being early feels exactly like being wrong. Prices move against you. People doubt you. The media questions everything. And during that phase, most people quit. They cannot handle the pressure. They cannot stay patient. And that is why they miss the biggest moves. Now here is something you really need to think about. If everyone agrees on an opportunity, it is probably too late. Because the moment something becomes obvious, it gets priced in. The real advantage comes before that moment. When there is still doubt, when there is still fear, when the narrative is not clear. That is where positioning matters most. Cathie Wood has built her entire strategy around this idea, investing in disruptive innovation before it becomes mainstream. And yes, that comes with volatility. It comes with criticism. It comes with periods where it looks like it is not working. But over the long term, that is where outsized returns are created. Now let us talk about another layer that most people ignore. Time horizon. This might be the biggest difference between those who build wealth and those who do not. Because even if you identify the right opportunity, if your time horizon is too short, you will still lose. You will exit too early. You will react to short-term noise. You will let volatility shake you out. And that is exactly what happens to most investors. They think long-term, but act short-term. And that contradiction destroys results. Cathie Wood repeatedly emphasizes a 5-year horizon or longer. Not because it sounds good, but because that is how long true innovation takes to play out. And if you are not willing to commit to that time frame, you are not really investing. You are speculating. Now pause for a second and think about this. How many people around you are actually thinking 5 years ahead? Most people are thinking about next week, next month, maybe next year. And that short-term mindset creates a massive opportunity for those who think differently. Because while others are reacting, you can be positioning. While others are chasing, you can be building. And over time, that difference compounds. Now here is where it becomes even more powerful. These technologies are not just creating new companies. They are replacing old ones. That is the part people underestimate. Disruption is not just creation. It is destruction. Entire industries will shrink. Business models will become obsolete. Jobs will disappear. And capital will flow from the old to the new. And if you are positioned on the wrong side of that shift, it does not matter how hard you work. You will struggle. But if you understand where the world is moving, you can align yourself with that direction, and that is where wealth is created, not by fighting change, but by riding it. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people will not act on this, not because they do not understand it, but because it requires a mindset shift. It requires patience. It requires conviction. It requires the ability to ignore noise. And those are rare traits. Because it is much easier to follow trends. It is much easier to react. It is much easier to wait. But easy decisions rarely lead to extraordinary outcomes. And that is exactly what Cathie Wood is pointing toward. An extraordinary opportunity, one that does not come often, one that feels uncertain now, but will feel obvious later. And when that moment comes, people will say the same thing they always say. I wish I had invested earlier. But by then, it will not matter, because the biggest gains will already be behind. And here is something even deeper that most people completely overlook. The biggest wealth opportunities do not just change markets, they change behavior. When a technology becomes truly transformative, it does not stay limited to investors or companies. It reshapes how ordinary people live, work, spend, and think. And that shift creates second-order opportunities that are often even bigger than the first. That is where exponential wealth is quietly built, not just in the core innovation, but in everything that grows around it. So, while most people are busy asking whether this trend is real or not, a much smarter question begins to emerge. If this becomes as big as it looks, where else does value get created? Because that is the difference between following the wave and positioning yourself where the wave is going next. And by the time the crowd figures that out, the real advantage is already gone. So, the real question is not whether this opportunity exists. It is whether you are willing to see it before everyone else does. Because the next wave of wealth is not waiting. It is already moving, right now, quietly, and whether you participate in it or watch it from the sidelines will depend entirely on the decisions you make today.